Fabulous. I will edit beforehand and then send it to you however you want to do it. So
Perfect. Okay, so hi, I'm Ridhya Raj, and you've tuned in to the author interview. Books have this magical ability to take us on a journey. We travel in the comfort of our own homes. We go on adventures that were beyond our own imaginations. And joining me to share her journey in the literary arts is, of course, the amazing Angela Candler. Angela, welcome to the author interview.
thank you so much for having me. You're actually the first person to really pin me down for an author interview. I usually like bypass them pretty quickly. So yes, this is going to be interesting.
I'm honored to be the first to host you. And let's start at the very beginning. Did you always have the ambition to become an author? Was this something that you always wanted to do?
Honestly, it wasn't even in my ballpark. Not at all. Nowhere near. When I was a kid, I struggled to read. I didn't do great at school. So thinking of anything along these lines, back when I grew up, was, totally out of the realm of a dream that could happen, if that makes sense. Um, it was only in later life that I found writing very therapeutic, and it completely changed my whole life.
That is amazing because I know that if we were to jog through your memory, we would find you suited and booted.
Indeed, completely different.
And I feel like that is something that's so magical about creativity is that sometimes it dawns upon us in the most unexpected of times. And where did this actually begin for you, Angela?
So, my creative side kind of came out around 13 years ago, due to chronic illness. So let's be honest here. I went from suited to booted, running around London and going to other countries and stuff, to being medically retired and laid up in bed because the pain was so bad, fatigue was insane. And I needed something that would kind of make me feel that I could get through a really bad day, if that makes sense. Um, because I also had trauma from before. I was involved in a very bad domestic violence relationship. So when I became very sick later on, many years past this, I was like, well, it's just me in my bed and my thoughts. I'm going to have to deal with this. Otherwise, I'm not going to get through the pain that I already have, plus the trauma. So I started writing. And it was very therapeutic because you could start writing characters based on your experiences, but then have control of the narrative, which really helped me kind of do a lot of healing, um, and start retraining my subconscious in a sense of actually it wasn't my fault, the domestic violence and the health issues. So it was a very therapeutic time because I mixed it with art as well and writing, and yeah, it started, but I did it in secret.
I feel like what you've just mentioned is so indicative of your inner strength and the strength that we find in many chronically ill people, especially when so much about your day to day life is outside of your control. And this also teaches those who have internalized ableism to realize that those who may be bedbound, those who are chronically ill, it doesn't mean that there's less value to an individual just because these limitations exist. And thank you so much for sharing that with such vulnerability because it's a conversation that isn't happening all that often.
Yeah, and that's the problem. And I think there's so much pressure to be a certain way, a certain look, a certain way you talk, the way you write. And it's like, no, we are all individual humans. We all have weaknesses and strengths, compassion, anger. It all makes us who we are. And just because you might be bedbound doesn't make you a lesser person. Just because you have health issues doesn't make you lesser. We just have to look at our time better than a lot of people. It's like when I was at the height of my health issues, you would not even speak to me before 11 o'clock in the morning. The amount of medication, the pain, and it was just this constant brain fog. And you really don't want to be speaking to people as well, because
You can't.
I don't know about you, but then there's also this thing of where you try and explain, but then you're apologizing for it because they're like, well, I've had a bad day and I've worked through it. Why can't you? And it's like,
Your bad day versus my bad day, two very different things.
exactly. But if people don't understand it, they will never have that compassion. They will have a certain amount of what's the word? They'll have a little bit of time and a little bit of compassion,
A little
but
empathy, but to a limit.
exactly, and then it'll stop, and then it's like, okay, you're left to it, which is fine. So I just wrote, and I did art, and I think I became a teenager again. That's what I honestly think. Like mindset wise, it was like my body is not going anywhere. I was like people in COVID
Okay.
without, you know what I mean? Before COVID, this was my life, was my house, and it was that type of thing. And I was just, my body's in pain, but I still have a mind that I can use. I might not have been able to use my hands so well at that time. So I used an app and I spoke into the app, made it into text. So there's all of these things that you can do to get out of your own way as well, if you really want to. So yeah, that's how it started, and kept it very secret for a very long time.
So, what was it that sparked you into taking it from secrecy and in the shadows and bringing it out to the world to share with us?
It kind of wasn't my fault, this is the truth. I sent it to a friend of mine who used to be a publisher, and I'm like, do me a favor, have a read of this, tell me what you think. I'm like, I wrote this many years ago. I said it's come from a space of healing and trauma and whatever else. I said, but just read it, tell me, is there anything? I said, because I've written a lot of stuff in 10 years. And the next thing I know, she actually she came back and she's like, this has got legs. And she put it on Amazon. And I'm like, okay, because she knew I wouldn't have taken that step.
Yeah.
She knew me that well. And I was like, what are you doing? It's like, but it was the best decision that happened, to be fair, because it got me out of my own way, and that feeling of not being that kid who was struggling to read, who, I was 50 years old when this happened. Last year I turned 50, and it seems that everything has just kind of changed from there. My 40s upwards has been like the best years ever. Even with health issues, it's been the best.
I feel like that's something that's so powerful because oftentimes we're led to believe that our value as women decreases as we age and as we grow older. But when you ask actual women, we find out that this is quite contrary. And like you said, these years leading up to you becoming 50 years strong, pun intended, have been so phenomenal for your growth as a creative individual. And I've had a look at your children's books, your children's writing, and what I feel stands out the most to me is the way in which it doesn't come across as an adult writing for children.
Mm.
And you saying that your mindset had gotten a lot younger actually comes through in the children's books, because you see it in a way that is so relative to children, to what they're going through in their lives. And you're very diverse in your writing ability, because not only have you written for children, you've also written for adults. How did you choose really what to write and when?
So, to be fair, my adult writing was the main event. Put it that way. It's always been, because I would write, because I'm a mindfulness master practitioner. I've always been about helping others and how can we get the mind a bit better with everything that's going on in our lives, basically. My friend came to me and she was like, Angie, the kids are so stressed. They're like 6 years old, living in London, very stressed lives, anxiety, kids of 6 years old of anxiety. And I'm like,
We need to do
no,
something.
this isn't this. There has to be a way, because the mom was already anxious anyway. She was an anxious woman as well. So I'm like, right, I need to create something that's fun, that's not gonna make the mom feel that actually I'm putting it out for her, but by her reading it with the kids, it kind of
Helping her as
starts
well.
naturally doing stuff. So I never published those books, ever. Those books that you've read, I've never published them.
Well, I believe, for example, every young child that I know, I would say about 10 kids in total, I would actually immediately put these books into their hands, because there is so much of goodness, and especially in a time where world literacy levels are plummeting, this is a way for children to reconnect, but not just reconnect with their education, to reconnect with their minds and their little hearts. And like you're saying, 6-year-olds having anxiety, that's a real thing. So I hope that we'll see
Heartbreaking.
those I hope we'll see those kids' books published soon, because I know that they will help so many people.
No,
Not just the kids, the parents too.
that's the main aim of it. Is my thought process has always been, if we can start kids from a younger age of understanding their feelings, their thoughts, their nervous system, how to control anxiety, it'll make them better teenagers. Because when you're a teenager, your hormones are poof, no matter your gender, your hormones go crazy. So if we can start teaching children at a younger age how to understand their bodies, understand their mindsets, their emotions, maybe we will have not so stressed teenagers.
Which
That's the
also
idea around it, which
which
then goes
also
into
teaches them to become adults that are
exactly,
able to manage their emotions.
yeah,
And because we know that the generation that exists right now does not necessarily have a hold on that. They don't know how to identify their emotions, how to stop their minds from spiraling. So if we can teach at a young age and reinforce as they go to teens and then into adulthood, then
yeah.
we've won.
Exactly. And that's just what I've always said about this, is that, so obviously I've only come back to South Africa 3 years ago. I was away for 21 years. It's like insane how it's like a whole lifetime I was away. So I can see the difference in cultures and mindsets since coming back. And unfortunately still here, mental health, mindset is really still a taboo subject.
Yeah.
So if we can have these children's books that can kind of subtly make change, maybe then it won't be so slammed in the face and then people are repelling, they're like, I don't like change, what are you doing? If we can do it subtly, maybe that'll help.
I am so with you on that, Angela, because I feel like children do need help. Just last week, we looked at a story in the news of a child dying by suicide at 12 years old. A month ago, there was a child that died by suicide at the age of 9 due to bullying. Children need help. And oftentimes, just like how they learn through play, they can learn through story time. And this is why we need children's authors, and we need local children's authors as well, because the children need to be able to relate to these stories. That is how they will learn. And switching a little on the trajectory here, you have a new book coming out soon.
I do.
And Salt. Let's chat a little about that, because I know that the first chapter I read had me hooked. You reached in and you snatched me up and you plucked me into the book, and I loved being there. How did the inspiration for Blood and Salt come about?
So I've written fantasy before, but I've never published fantasy. But I'm part of a writers club that meets every month. And by doing these short stories, kind of Blood and Salt dark fantasy kind of came to life. I took an old story of mine, which was like the grounding of it, but then I completely shredded it and made it Blood and Salt. What inspired it is I really love the Celtic feeling and the Highlands of Scotland and the Isle of
Magical.
Skye, all of those places. Those to me it's magic. I look at the Highlands and the Celtic stuff and I'm like, you see the fairies, you see the unseelie courts, you see all the monsters and the kelpies. And I wanted to bring a different feel to dark fantasy because everyone kind of writes about the same stuff, which is perfectly fine because we all have a different voice, right? But not a lot of people talk about kelpies. And I was like, I'm having a kelpie. And the kelpie inspired me because I've been at the place in Scotland where they have the statues of the kelpies.
Oh, wow.
And it's always sat with me. It's always been this thing of like, I love all the stories around it. And I'm like, I want to make it my own. So even though you can see if you've been to Scotland, you'll see like, oh, actually that sounds a pretty familiar like space. But I couldn't do Scotland because Scotland is already there.
Yeah.
It's not fantasy. So I had to change it and make it
world
Samaria. Yeah. I had to make it into this completely different world, but kind of still having that feel of Celtic and fairy and a bit nasty.
I personally love the fact that this started at the writing room, and that's why I really love the idea of it, because I know of your involvement within the South African Indie Authors Association as one of the founders, and the writers' rooms, those are free spaces, and very few things in this day and age are free.
Yes.
These are free spaces. You don't even have to be a member of Saya to join in, but this is what can come from joining. This is what can come, a book that is launching on the 1st of June. That is so major.
It's crazy. I mean, one minute I was deep in editing, pulling my hair out like, and then the next we're like launching, and it's like, wow, the time has flown, the months have flown. And the thing is, I'm very lucky is that I can write full time. So I could sit here behind my desk for like 8 to 10 hours if I wanted to. And I have to get people to remind me to leave the desk.
Leave the desk. Remember food first.
Yeah, exactly. So when I was writing Blood and Salt, I was here for hours and hours and hours. And I was like, even on my phone, I had it on my phone. So I could, if I'm sitting in my lounge, I'd be like this, also writing in it. Because it just resonated so deeply with me, the story, and it was just flowing. It was like a big download of like, here you go, run with it. And yeah, and I like the sarcasm within it and the different things it comes with. And I'm actually on book 2 at the moment.
I didn't know there was going to be a book 2, but I'm so
Mhm.
excited about it because, as I'm saying, from that
Yeah.
first page, you kind of yanked me into the story, and I couldn't wait for there to be more, Angela. And you've mentioned the tools of accessibility that exist here. So in your initial writing stages, using a voice app, now
Yeah.
having it on your phone. And this, I feel, is really important because if you have limitations, regardless of what they are, there
Yeah.
are still ways in which you're able to embrace your creativity and see it bear fruition. I mean,
Yeah.
the cover, for example, of Blood and Salt, it is. I know we're not supposed to judge books by covers. I
But
know.
we do. Come
But
on, we do. Come on. There's I don't care what anyone says, we judge a book by its cover. Plain and simple.
we do, and the cover art, it's so multidimensional. It does make you want to pick up the book. And I know that was also phenomenal South African talent right there
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah, to read is my go-to for my art. She's currently working on character art for the book, um, for the physical book when it comes out. So the physical book will have character art within it.
I love that. I
Mm.
absolutely love that because you see, this is what I mean when I say that local authors can stand toe to toe on the world stage with the best.
100%. 100%. We have got so much talent in this country, but unfortunately, the narrative is still fed international. Yeah. You go into a bookstore, you might get a little section at the back, which is South African authors.
Yeah,
All the front is all
or
international,
international.
famous people. And I'm like, we need to be looking after our homegrown because I have read some phenomenal books with this country, all different genre. We are not
Every genre.
just, we have every single genre. And my God, we have a lot of spice as well. It's like, who knew? We don't have boring work. And
No,
I think people think that maybe we're just writing about folks tales and stuff. I just have this overseas, a lot of people are like, oh, so you're writing about, Africa, you're writing about the folks tales. And it's like, just because we're South African doesn't mean that we only
not
write this.
not
We
every
write,
book is 40 plus.
you know, I mean, people used to think that I had lions and tigers in my backyard when I lived overseas. They're like, do you have your elephants and that like in your backyard? I'm like, no. Do you? It's like, no.
Right now, I have once seen a Bambi-like creature and a mongoose, but no lions and tigers. That's
Exactly.
for certain.
Exactly. We have the certain things, but I think because people hear Africa, South Africa,
Yeah,
they naturally think of the big five.
I think of the big
Um,
five. But
exactly.
if we were to say big five in the literary world, I would say authors, artists, publishers, proofreaders,
Editors,
editors, because
the ARC
there's
readers, and the beta readers and the alpha readers. Every single person that is involved with a book needs to be celebrated. So, like when I'm doing my book launch at the end of the month, I'm having all the people who supported me on it because without them, it wouldn't be what it is.
the community.
Yeah, exactly. It takes a community to make a book something special. From the cover design to people like yourself to, all of it. It makes the book what it is. It
It
can't
does.
function without the other.
And I really love that your launch is accessibility friendly because right now people are strapped for cash
Mhm.
and attending something because it's interesting to them is hard. People are having to choose between putting food on the table and an event, and we don't want to put them in that
No,
position. And I mean, for example, there's hantavirus and Ebola and all of these things going around. And what
Hmm.
you did, I really like. You chose to do your launch online, which
Yeah.
means people from not just around South Africa, but around the world have the accessibility option
Mm.
of
Yeah,
tuning in.
it's doing an online launch personally was because I know what it's like for someone who's chronically ill to sometimes have to bow out of things, maybe last minute or whatever. And there's never been that accessibility to do it online. So
Yes,
whenever I've done anything, it naturally, I have to have an online presence with it because that was how I survived for many
yes.
years. That was my lifeline to people, to, my family, to whatever.
World.
Exactly. So for me, it's not just for accessibility, it's for saving money, it's for people who can't physically get out of the house, or they've got kids and life is too hectic. You know, we should be using platforms like this to be making it easier for authors to get out there, for people to come together and celebrate things. Just because it's not in person physically doesn't mean it's lesser.
Absolutely.
You
It's
can
still
still get a
special.
signed book from someone, or they just get sent. Do you know what I mean? There's all different ways to do it. But for me, it's about showing up for people like me that might not have been able to do something like this.
Angela, the way in which you live your truth is something that I aspire to, because you have ensured that in every action that you take, your values are absolutely entrenched in it. And I think that is something that I'd love to see in a lot more people, whether it is from a stance of saying people first, not AI, to accessibility, to recognizing local. These are things that you absolutely embody. And I, for one, cannot wait to see what comes next from you, because it was 50 years strong. It's blood
50
and
years
soul.
brave.
Brave, correct.
50 years brave. Yeah, blood and salt. Yeah, there's
And then it will be your other fantasy books and your kids' book,
mm.
Blood and Soul version 2.
But one thing I must say, it takes an army to make change. It doesn't mean it has to be a negative army. I'm talking about people like yourself, people like Lee, like Terry, like Michelle, like Azaria, everybody. Leonie, all of you are making the change. You are all sending out those ripple effects. And if we keep on doing that, look at Siobhan Balmer. Look at
Madam
the ripple
Captivate.
effect. Yeah. But this is why we join forces. This is why we put those ripples together so we can make bigger impact. Because you don't know what's happening in somebody's life in the background, really. And if we can make someone actually smile one day, or have a book that actually makes them feel a little bit better or understand something a bit better, we've done our job.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Angela, all I can say is, wow. I am so proud of you and all that you've done and all that is still to come. And I want to thank you so much for taking the time and not just being here to do this, but stepping outside of your comfort zone to do it as well. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
yes. It's I prefer to celebrate others than myself. I'm very much about putting everyone, I want them to shine, you know. That doesn't mean I don't shine lesser. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
like,
you're shining too.
yeah, exactly. So it's all about just being nice, leading with kindness. It goes a long way in this life, especially in the life we're having at the moment. a lot of stress, a lot of impact. So just be kind. Treat people the way you want to be treated. That's it.
And as you always say at the South African Indie Authors Association, we rise together.
We do. We rise together and we make change. That's the way we do it. It's the only way we can do it, to be a positive force. There's no point in just one person standing there screaming the top of their lungs. No one's going to hear them. Put 100 people together, they're going to listen. Put 1,000 people together, they're really going to listen. But it takes one voice, 2 voices, 3, 4, 5. Every voice matters. Human voices.
Yes, human voices.
Thank you.
Yay! You did so good.